My name is Ethan. I'm 42, recently divorced. And I live in a small coastal town in Maine, where the sound of waves crashing against the shore is my only consistent companion. My life has settled into a predictable rhythm. Early morning runs along. The beach, a remote job designing websites that pays the bills but rarely excites me. An evening spent reorganizing my vinyl record collection that I've alphabetized 3 different ways this year alone. I'm not ashamed to admit I talk to my eye. Houseplants. The fern in my living room is named Ferdinand, and sometimes I catch myself waiting for him to respond. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. I used to dream of creating something meaningful, of leaving my mark on the world. Then I became a husband, then a workaholic, and now I'm just here, a guy who pays his bills on time, knows exactly how long to steep different types of tea, and pretends to enjoy the local baseball games when colleagues invite me, though I secretly count the minutes until I can leave. To my right lies Sophia. She's 55, divorced for nearly a decade. Her husband Michael left her for his 20-something assistant in what must be the most clichéd midlife crisis in human history. Since then, she's lived alone in that beautiful Victorian house, tending to her garden of wildflowers, hosting book club meetings I occasionally overhear through open windows, walking her ancient golden retriever Hemingway, who moves with the deliberate slowness of an old soul. Sophia is the kind of woman who exudes quiet, confident silver streaks in her dark hair that she never attempts to hide, reading glasses that hang from a chain around her neck, and a smile that appears genuine but carefully measured, as if she's rationing joy. We've been neighbors for almost 5 years, exchanging pleasant nods, occasional comments about the weather, and sometimes brief conversations about the neighborhood council's latest ridiculous proposal. Not friends, exactly, more like familiar strangers who share a property line and an unspoken agreement to keep our distance. I never imagined that this woman, who I knew so little about despite living 20 feet away, would become the reason my carefully constructed solitude would crumble. And it all began with an unexpected phone call that jolted me from sleep at exactly 12:17 a.m. On a Tuesday in April, that night had been unremarkable. I'd fallen asleep on the couch watching a documentary about deep-sea creatures, Ferdinand drooping slightly beside me as if equally bored by the narrator's monotone voice. The sound of rain against the windows created a soothing backdrop, and I was drifting in that comfortable space between wakefulness and dreams when my phone erupted with a shrill ring. I fumbled for it in the darkness, squinting at the bright screen. The caller ID read Sophia Winters. I stared at it in confusion. We'd exchanged numbers once for emergency purposes, but she'd never used it. My mind immediately leapt to worst-case scenarios: fire break-in, medical emergency. "Hello?" I answered, my voice thick with sleep. "Ethan." Her voice was breathless, urgent, but not panicked. "I need you to come over, right now. I can't wait until morning." I sat up straight, instantly alert. "What's wrong? Are you okay?" "Yes, no, I'm not hurt," she stammered. "Just please, can you come?" I wouldn't ask if it wasn't important. Something in her voice, a mixture of excitement and desperation, made me grab my keys without hesitation. "I'll be right there," I promised, already slipping on shoes. The rain had intensified, coming down in sheets that instantly soaked through my jacket as I dashed across our shared lawn. Sophia's Victorian glowed like a lighthouse in the storm, every light blazing as if she'd illuminated the entire house in anticipation of my arrival. When I reached her porch, the front door swung open before I could knock. There stood Sophia, not in distress as I'd expected, but vibrant with an energy I'd never seen in her before. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun, reading glasses perched atop her head, and she wore paint-splattered overalls over a faded university sweatshirt. Behind her, I could see the living room was in complete disarray, furniture pushed against walls, drop cloths covering the hardwood floors, and what appeared to be dozens of paintings leaning against every available surface. "You came," she said, as if surprised, despite having summoned me herself. "Of course I came," I replied, water dripping from my hair onto her welcome mat. "What's going on? Are you okay?" She stepped aside to let me in, and as I crossed the threshold, I entered what could only be described as beautiful chaos. Canvases everywhere, some blank, some half-finished, others completed. Paint tubes squeezed and discarded, brushes soaking in jars of murky water, and in the center of it all, an enormous canvas propped on an easel. Still wet with fresh strokes of midnight blue and vibrant crimson, announced, gesturing widely at the artistic explosion surrounding us. After 10 years of nothing, no inspiration, no desire to create it, all came back tonight. Every painting I've been unable to make since Michael left, they're all here now in my head, demanding to be born. She paused, suddenly looking uncertain. I needed someone to witness this, someone to tell me I'm not losing my mind. There dripping rain onto her dropcloth, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. The Sophia I knew or thought I knew was reserved, composed, predictable. This woman before me was electric, almost feverish with creative energy. You paint? I said stupidly, stating the obvious. She laughed, a rich sound I'd never heard from her before. I used to. Before my divorce, I was an artist. Not famous, but I had gallery showings, sold pieces, even taught at the community college. Her smile faded slightly. Then Michael left, and something in me shut down. I couldn't create anymore, not a single stroke for almost a decade. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. I looked around at the explosion of color and form that filled her normally pristine living room until tonight. Till tonight, she echoed, picking up a brush and twirling it between her fingers like a baton. I was about to go to bed when it hit me, this tsunami of inspiration. I started with one canvas, then another, and another. I couldn't stop. But then I realized, what? I prompted when she trailed off. That I've been hiding for 10 years. That I've been half alive, going through the motions. And if I don't share this moment with someone, it might not be real. It might disappear by morning. She looked at me directly, her eyes bright with vulnerability. You were the only person I could think to call. I felt something shift in my chest, a recognition, perhaps, of seeing someone emerge from the same kind of emotional hibernation I'd been living in myself. I removed my wet jacket and hung it by the door. Show me, I said simply. For the next hour, Sophia led me through her artistic resurrection, explaining each canvas, each splash of color, the meaning behind abstract forms and vivid landscapes. She spoke with her hands as much as her voice, paint-stained fingers tracing shapes in the air. I noticed how her entire being seemed transformed, her posture more open, her movements fluid, her eyes alight with purpose. This one, she said, guiding me to the large canvas on the central easel. This is what woke me up tonight. It was a seascape, but unlike any I'd seen before. The ocean was rendered in swirling blues and purples that seemed to move before my eyes, waves caught in mid-crash against a jagged shoreline. What made it extraordinary was the light, a sunrise or sunset that filled half the canvas with impossible oranges and pinks, reflecting off the water in fragmented brilliance. It wasn't technically perfect, but it was alive with emotion. The view from my bedroom window, she explained, but how it feels, not how it looks. It's beautiful, I said, and meant it. It's like you've painted the inside of a feeling. She looked at me with surprise, as if I'd understood something she hadn't articulated. Yes, exactly. That's exactly it. We stood in silence for a moment, both staring at the painting. The rain continued to drum against the windows, but it felt distant now, part of another world outside this space of creation and connection. Would you like some tea? She asked suddenly. I think I need to pause for a moment. My hands are starting to shake. I nodded, following her into the kitchen, which had somehow escaped the artistic explosion. As she filled the kettle and pulled mugs from a cabinet, I noticed the tremble in her fingers, the slight sway in her stance. When did you last eat? I asked. She looked up, blinking as if the question required translation. I don't remember. Lunch, maybe? Yesterday? Sit down, I instructed, taking the kettle from her. I'll make the tea. and something to eat. She didn't protest, sinking into a chair at her small breakfast table. I moved around her kitchen, finding tea bags, honey, and ingredients for simple sandwiches. There was something strangely intimate about opening someone else's refrigerator, learning the contents of their pantry. "I'm sorry for dragging you out in the rain at midnight," she said, watching me work. "I don't normally have artistic emergencies." I smiled, placing a mug of chamomile tea in front of her. "I'm glad you called. It's not like I was doing anything important? Just sleeping?" "Exactly. Highly overrated." I set a plate with a sandwich before her. "Eat. Artists need fuel." She took a bite and closed her eyes momentarily. I forgot about hunger, about tea, about rain. She looked at me. It's like I'd been sleepwalking for years, and tonight I finally woke up, sat across from her, cradling my own mug. What changed? Why tonight? Sophia stared into her tea, as if reading the answer in its amber depths. "I got a letter today. Michael is getting divorced again. His young assistant wasn't the answer to his midlife crisis after all." She looked up. I should have felt something vindication, maybe or satisfaction, but I felt nothing. And that scared me more than anything has in years. I nodded, understanding all too well how emptiness could be more terrifying than pain. "Realized I've been waiting," she continued. "Waiting to feel normal again. Waiting to want to paint again. Waiting for, I don't know, permission maybe. To be myself again." She gestured toward the living room. "And then tonight, it was like a dam broke." "Sometimes we need a shock to wake us up," I offered, "to remind us who we used to be." She studied me carefully. "And who did you used to be, Ethan? Before you became the quiet neighbor who talks to his plants?" The question caught me off guard. I'd grown so accustomed to my role as the divorced guy next door that I'd almost forgotten there was more to me than that. "I was a designer with big ideas," I admitted. "I wanted to create digital experiences that moved people, not just websites that sold things. I played guitar in a terrible band." I laughed more. I paused, surprised by my own candor. "I took risks." "What happened?" I shrugged, uncomfortable with how icily she'd turned the conversation toward me. "Life. Marriage to someone who needed stability more than dreams. A career that pays well but doesn't inspire. The usual story of growing up and putting away childish things." "Creating isn't childish," she said firmly. "It's the most human thing we do." We fell into silence, the rain providing a gentle soundtrack to our unexpected midnight confession session. I found myself studying her face, the fine lines around her eyes that spoke of both laughter and sorrow, the determined set of her jaw, the flecks of paint that dotted her cheekbone like unconventional freckles. "Why me?" I asked finally. "Call me tonight. We barely know each other." She set down her mug, considering. "Because you see me," she said simply. "Not the divorcee, not the woman who got left behind. Just me. When you wave from your yard or ask about Hemingway, you're actually looking at me, not through me. Do you know how rare that is?" I didn't know how to respond to that. Had I really seen her? Or was I seeing her truly for the first time? Tonight, paint splattered and alive with purpose. "Thank you for coming over," she continued, not waiting for my response. "For not thinking I was crazy? For making tea and sandwiches at 1 a.m. without complaint?" "That's what neighbors are for," I said lightly, though we both knew this interaction had pushed us well beyond mere neighbors. When I finally left her house, it was almost 3 a.m. The rain had slowed to a gentle mist, and the world had that peculiar stillness that exists only in the deepest part of night. Sophia walked me to the door, paint still streaking her clothes. "And Skin, will you come back tomorrow?" she asked, a vulnerability in her voice that made her sound much younger than her 55 years. "To see the paintings in daylight, they'll look different." "I will," I promised, meaning it. As I crossed back to my own house, I realized that, in just a few hours, something fundamental had shifted. I'd been summoned in the middle of the night not for an emergency, not for a crisis, but to witness someone coming back to life. And in doing so, I felt something stirring in myself as well, a curiosity, a resonance. The the first notes of a forgotten melody. When I finally climbed back into bed, sleep eluded me. I stared at the ceiling, replaying the evening's strange events. Sophia's artistic awakening, her surprising candor, the way her eyes lit up when she described a particular brushstroke, and more troubling, my own admissions about the parts of myself I'd allowed to fade away. For the first time in years, I fell asleep thinking not about website deadlines or bills to pay, but about possibilities, about the person I used to be and might become again, about the neighbor I thought I knew who had revealed herself to be so much more complex and alive than I'd imagined. And somehow, I knew that the midnight call that had interrupted my sleep was actually waking me up to something far more important. The next morning arrived with dazzling clarity, as if the night's storm had scrubbed the world clean. Sunlight streamed through my bedroom window with almost aggressive brightness, pulling me from a sleep far deeper than I'd experienced in months. I reached for my phone. 9:47 a.m. I'd overslept by nearly 3 hours, missing my usual dawn run and the start of my workday. Strangely, I felt no panic. Instead, I lay there for a moment, absorbing the quality of the light. The distant call of seagulls, the unusual sense of being fully present in my body. Last night's encounter with Sophia felt dreamlike in the morning sun, yet I knew it had been real as the lingering scent of paint that still clung to my shirt, discarded on the bedroom chair. I made coffee and carried it to my small deck overlooking the ocean, laptop abandoned on the kitchen counter. From this vantage point, I could see Sophia's Victorian, its elaborate trim work, gleaming white against the deep blue sky. Her curtains were drawn. Was she sleeping after her night of creative frenzy, or already awake and painting in the morning light? I had promised to return today, but hadn't specified when. Would morning be too eager? Afternoon too casual? I smiled at my sudden, adolescent uncertainty. When had I last worried about the proper timing of a social call? My phone buzzed with work emails, but for once, I let them wait. Instead, I found myself doing something I hadn't done in years. I walked to the small shed behind my house and pulled out my old sketchbook and charcoals. Sitting back on the deck, I began to draw the shoreline, the rhythm of waves, the dance of light on water. I was rusty, my lines uncertain, but there was a forgotten pleasure in the simple act of creation. Without purpose or deadline, it was nearly noon when I finally mustered the courage to walk across our shared lawn toward Sophia's house. A fresh thermos of coffee in one hand and my amateur morning sketches rolled under my arm. I felt strangely nervous, as if our midnight encounter had altered something fundamental between us that daylight might dispel. I knocked on her door, half expecting to find her still in creative disarray, surrounded by canvases. Instead, when she opened the door, I was momentarily startled by her transformation. Gone were the paint-splattered overalls and messy bun. She wore a simple linen dress, her hair falling in soft waves around her shoulders, reading glasses perched on her nose. Only the faint smudge of blue paint behind her ear betrayed last night's artistic frenzy. "You came," she said, echoing her words from the night before, but this time with a hint of uncertainty. "I promised I would," I replied, holding up the coffee. "I thought you might need this after your late night." Her smile relaxed into something genuine. "My hero," she said, stepping aside to let me in. "I've been up since 7, trying to make a sense of what happened last night." I followed her into the living room, which had undergone its own transformation. The drop cloths were gone, the furniture returned to its proper place. But the walls, previously adorned with tasteful but forgettable prints, now showcased several of last night's paintings, still drying but proudly displayed. "You've been busy," I observed, taking in the room's new energy. "I was afraid," she admitted, accepting the thermos. "Afraid that in the light of day, everything I created would look amateur and embarrassing. That the inspiration was just temporary madness. And," I prompted. She gestured to the walls with a mixture of pride and wonder. "And they're real. They're flawed, but they're alive. I actually called the community college this morning to see if they still need art instructors for their summer program." "That's fantastic," I said, genuinely impressed by her momentum. "What did they say?" The department chair nearly fell off his chair. She laughed. "He's coming over tomorrow to see my work. Apparently, they've been short-staffed in the visual arts department for months. I felt a surge of admiration for her courage to create through the night, to hang her work without apology, to immediately take steps to reclaim her former life. How long had it been since I'd acted with such decisive purpose? I brought something too, I said, unrolling my morning sketches with sudden self-consciousness. Nothing like your work, just some rough drawings I did this morning. Used to sketch all the time in college, but it's been years. Sophia took the pages from me with careful hands, studying each one with the focused attention of someone who understands the vulnerability of sharing creative work. These are wonderful, Ethan, she said, and I could tell she wasn't offering empty praise. You have a natural eye for composition. The way you've captured light on the water here, that's not easy. They're just sketches, I demurred, uncomfortable. With her scrutiny, no, she said firmly, looking up at me. They're evidence of life, of paying attention. You know how many people walk past that same shoreline every day and never really see it? We settled on our back porch with the coffee. The ocean spread before us like a living canvas, shifting colors under the midday sun. For the first time, our conversation flowed without the awkward pauses and polite distance that had characterized our previous interactions. We discovered shared tastes in music, a mutual love for obscure independent films, surprisingly similar childhoods despite our age difference, both raised by practical, loving parents who viewed artistic pursuits with benign bewilderment. They never discouraged me, Sophia explained, describing her accountant father and nurse mother. They just couldn't understand why anyone would choose the uncertain path of art when secure, respectable professions existed. I nodded, remembering my own parents' concerned expressions when I declared my intention to study design rather than business. Mine were the same. They wanted me to have what they never did: stability, financial security. And do you have security? She asked, her question carrying more weight than its simple words suggested. I considered this, looking out at the endless movement of the ocean. On paper, yes, I own my house, have savings, steady work, but there's another kind of security, isn't there? The security of knowing you're living authentically, using your gifts. That's the kind I lost when I stopped painting, she said softly. Financial security meant nothing when I felt hollow inside. We lapsed into comfortable silence, the kind that feels like conversation rather than its absence. I studied her profile against the backdrop of sea and sky, struck by how differently I saw her now compared to just 24 hours ago. No longer just the reserved neighbor with the old dog, but a woman of depth and passion, emerging from a decade-long creative hibernation. Tell me about your divorce, she said suddenly, turning to face me, if that's not too personal. The question surprised me, not because it was intrusive, but because I realized I wanted to answer it honestly. It was amicable, as these things go. Karen and I married young, grew in different directions. She's brilliant, a research scientist now, doing important work. I was proud of her success, supported her career moves. But somewhere along the way, we became colleagues more than partners. No dramatic betrayal? No screaming fights? Sophia asked, a hint of wry humor in her voice. Nothing so cinematic, I smiled. Just the slow realization that we were better friends than spouses, and that friendship couldn't sustain a marriage. Those can be the hardest endings, she observed. The ones without villains. It's easier to heal when you can point to a clear wound. I nodded, understanding exactly what she meant. Your divorce wasn't like that, I gather. Her expression darkened slightly, though not with anger, more with a kind of resigned wisdom. Michael's midlife crisis was textbook. Sports car, younger woman, sudden interest in extreme sports. I was blindsided at first, but looking back, there were signs. He'd been disappearing in plain sight for years before he physically left. That must have been devastating, I said, trying to imagine the betrayal. It was, she acknowledged. But do you know what was worse? Michael was larger-than-life charismatic, demanding. I let my art become secondary to maintaining our life, our social calendar, his needs. She traced the rim of her coffee cup thoughtfully. When he left, I had nowhere to hide from that truth. And yet you stopped painting entirely, I observed. Because painting would have forced me to face all of it, not just his betrayal, but my own. She looked at me with startling clarity. It's taken me 10 years to forgive myself for that. For letting someone else's story become more important than my own. Her words resonated with uncomfortable precision. Hadn't I done something similar? Allowed my creative ambitions to be subsumed by practical concerns, external expectations. The difference was that I'd had no dramatic catalyst like betrayal to force a reckoning, just the slow erosion of purpose. So gradual I hardly noticed its disappearance. Last night I said carefully when you called. You said I was the only person you thought to call? Why not a friend? Family. She considered this, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. Friends would have been concerned, suggested I get some rest, reminded me I had responsibilities in the morning. Family would have seen it as evidence of emotional instability. She smiled slightly. You were an unknown quantity. Someone who might understand without trying to manage the situation. And did I understand? Better than I expected, she admitted. You didn't look at me like I was having a breakdown. You looked at me like what was happening was important. It was important, I said. Is important. A comfortable silence fell between us again, broken only by the distant barking of Hemingway from inside the house, reminding his owner of his existence. I should take him for his walk, Sophia said, standing. He's been very patient with my artistic resurrection. I could join you, I offered, surprising myself, if you'd like company. Her smile was answer enough. We spent the afternoon walking the coastal path with Hemingway, ambling slowly between us, stopping frequently to rest his arthritic joints. Our conversation meandered like our path touching on books that had changed us. Places we hoped to visit, small observations about the town we both loved but experienced differently. For the first time in longer than I could remember, I felt fully present, not mentally checking work emails or planning tomorrow's tasks while pretending to listen. When we returned to our houses, the sun was already beginning its descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in colors reminiscent of Sophia's seascape from the night before. Would you like to stay for dinner? She asked as we reached her porch. Nothing fancy, just pasta and conversation. I'd like that, I said, realizing I had no desire to return to my empty house and the work deadlines I'd been ignoring all day. Cooking together proved surprisingly natural, as if we'd established a rhythm long ago, rather than just discovered it. Chopped vegetables while she prepared a simple sauce, Hemingway watching hopefully from his bed in the corner. We moved around her kitchen with an easy coordination, reaching past each other for utensils, tasting from the same spoon, laughing when we both reached for the salt at the same moment. Over dinner, Sophia shared more about her plans to return to teaching. I used to love watching students discover their own voice, she explained, twirling pasta around her fork. Especially the older ones who came to art late in life, who thought they had nothing worth expressing. Like me with my sad little sketches, I teased. No, she said seriously. Like someone who sees beauty but has forgotten they have permission. To capture it, she studied me over her wine glass. What would you create if you gave yourself permission, Ethan? Duh! The question lingered between us, challenging and gentle all at once. What would I create? When had I stopped asking myself that question and started asking only what would sell, what would please clients, what would pay the mortgage? I used to dream about designing interactive experiences that moved people, I admitted. Websites, but digital spaces that felt like art that created emotional responses. What stopped you? Shrugged, uncomfortable with the directness of her gaze. Practicality, the market. Clients want functional, not transcendent. Some might, she acknowledged, but not all. Art finds its audience even in unexpected places. After dinner, she showed me her studio upstairs, a room I'd never known existed, from my vantage point next door. Unlike the spontaneous creative explosion of the night before, this space spoke of dedicated craft and easel positioned for optimal natural light. Shelves of organized supplies, reference books on technique and color theory. I never got rid of anything, she explained, running her hand along a set of expensive brushes. Even when I wasn't painting, I couldn't bear to dismantle the possibility that I might someday return to it. Faith in your future self, I observed. Or fear of fully letting go, she countered with unflinching honesty. But now it feels like foresight. She showed me older work stored carefully against the walls, paintings from before her divorce. That demonstrated technical skill, but lacked the raw emotional quality of her midnight creations. I was a better technician then, she mused, but I think I'm a better artist now because you've lived more, I suggested. Experienced loss, not just loss, she corrected gently. Survival. There's a difference between experiencing pain and coming through it with your capacity for joy intact. That's what I want to paint now, not just how things look, but how it feels to remain open to life despite everything. When I finally left her house that evening, the stars were emerging in a clear sky, the air cool with early spring freshness. We stood on her porch, suddenly awkward in the face of farewell, as if neither of us quite knew what label to put on the day we'd shared. "Thank you," she said finally, "for answering your phone last night. For coming over. For today." "Thank you for calling," I replied. "For trusting me with your awakening." She smiled at that, the moonlight catching the silver in her hair. "Will I see you tomorrow? Or have I monopolized enough of your time?" "You haven't," I assured her. "I'd like to see what you create next." Walking back to my house, I felt a strange buoyancy, as if something long compressed within me had begun to expand again. Here's the script cleaned up for CapCut TTS. I opened my laptop not to check emails, but to research local art events, community creative spaces, digital design innovations I'd been too busy to explore. For the first time in years, I felt curious. Rather than tired at the end of a day, I slept deeply that night and dreamed of colors I couldn't name. The next week unfolded in a series of small revelations and shared moments. True to her word, Sophia met with the department chair who offered her a summer position teaching 2 introductory painting courses. I found myself reorganizing my workday to end earlier, making time for evening walks with Sophia and Hemingway along the shore, for impromptu dinners on either her porch or mine, for conversations that stretched late into the night. We established an unspoken rhythm, mornings to ourselves for work and individual pursuits, afternoons and evenings increasingly shared. I began sketching regularly again, sometimes beside her as she painted, both of us working in companionable silence broken only by occasional questions or observations. "You're different, more present somehow. Are you seeing someone new?" I hesitated, unsure how to characterize what was developing between Sophia and me. "I'm rediscovering some parts of myself. Yes, there's someone who's helping with that." Rebecca smiled knowingly. "Well, it looks good on you. And by the way, that design concept you sent yesterday? Brilliant."
Exactly.
The fresh approach we'd been looking for. I thanked her, realizing that my renewed creative energy wasn't just affecting my personal life, but flowing into my work as well. The websites I was designing had begun to incorporate more artistic elements, more emotional resonance, and surprisingly, clients were responding enthusiastically. One evening, about 10 days after Sophia's midnight call, we sat on my deck watching the sunset, a bottle of wine half empty between us. Hemingway dozed at our feet, occasionally twitching in doggy dreams. "I have something to show you." Out a small canvas about 8 by 10 inches, and handed it to me without explanation. It was a portrait of me. Not a photorealistic rendering, but something more impressionistic, capturing not just my physical features, but something underneath. In it, I was looking slightly away, my expression contemplative, but with a hint of a smile, rendered in vibrant blues and greens that suggested ocean and sky without depicting them literally. "This is how you see me? This is how you are when you forget to maintain your careful distance, when you're fully present?" I studied the painting, seeing myself through her eyes, not the cautious, slightly withdrawn neighbor I'd become, but someone more vital, more engaged with the world. "Do you like it? It's beautiful. Not because it's me, but because you've captured something I didn't know was visible." The best portraits always reveal what the subject might prefer to keep hidden, the vulnerability beneath the composure. Was a question in her gaze that I wasn't quite ready to answer, step neither of us had yet taken despite our rapidly deepening connection. I glanced away first, back to the painting in my hands. "I've been thinking about what you asked me before, what I would create if I gave myself permission." And I've started sketching concepts for an interactive art installation, digital and physical elements combined. Something that responds to human emotion, changes based on how people engage with it. I hesitated, feeling foolish describing such an impractical project. It's just an idea. Ideas are where everything begins. Even midnight paintings that change. The course of a life. Her words hung in the twilight air between us, acknowledging what we both knew but hadn't yet articulated, that her impulsive call 10 days ago had altered something fundamental for both of us. Set us on a path neither had anticipated. I've been alone a long time. I got comfortable with it, built routines around it. As did I. There's safety in solitude. No expectations to manage. No disappointments to weather. But also no witness to your life. No witness. We sat in silence. As the last colors of sunset faded from the sky and the first stars appeared, Hemingway snored gently at our feet, the sound oddly comforting in the gathering darkness. I should get home. I have early preparations for my first class tomorrow. I walked her to the edge of my property, the small portrait still in my hands. At the boundary between our yards, she turned to face me, her expression thoughtful in the moonlight. Whatever this is, I wasn't looking for it. Ow. Neither was I, but I'm not sorry it's happening. Even if it complicates things, complications can be beautiful. She smiled at that, reaching out to touch my arm briefly. Good night, Ethan. Thank you for the witness. I watched her walk away, Hemingway, lumbering faithfully beside her, until they disappeared into her Victorian house with its gables and secrets and artistic revival. Looking down at the portrait in my hands, I felt a surge of something unfamiliar, not just attraction or affection, but a kind of recognition, as if Sophia had painted not just how she saw me, but how I might become if I continued on this unexpected path. The morning of Sophia's first teaching day dawned clear and bright, the kind of pristine spring day that seems designed to herald new beginnings. I found myself awake unusually early, watching from my kitchen window as she emerged from her house precisely at 7:15, dressed in a flowing indigo dress with a leather portfolio tucked under her arm. Her step had a buoyancy that made her appear younger, more vibrant a woman, walking purposefully toward reclaiming her identity rather than just heading to work. Before I could second-guess myself, I grabbed the small package I'd prepared the night before and hurried outside, catching her just as she was unlocking her car. Morning, you're up early. I wanted to catch you before your big day. Just a small good luck token. She accepted it with a curious look, carefully unwrapping the simple brown paper to reveal a handmade leather cord bracelet with a small silver charm paintbrush crossed. With a pen, I found it at that artisan market downtown. The symbol seemed appropriate, art and teaching coming together. She ran her finger over the charm, her expression softening. It's perfect. I was more nervous than I realized until this moment. You're going to be amazing. Those students have no idea how lucky they are. She glanced at her watch, then surprised me by stepping forward and placing a quick, soft kiss on my cheek. Thank you for the vote of confidence. Wish me luck. You don't? Need it, but good luck anyway. I watched her drive away, the unexpected warmth of her kiss lingering on my skin, before heading back inside to start my own workday. Opening my laptop, I found myself approaching my projects with renewed enthusiasm, incorporating elements of artistry into what had previously been functional designs. The bracelet had cost less than $30, but Sophia's reaction, that genuine moment of touched surprise, felt more valuable than any professional accolade I'd received in years. Around noon, my phone buzzed with a text from her. First class complete. They didn't run screaming from the room, having lunch in the faculty lounge feels surreal. Thank you for the bracelet, touching it for courage all morning. I smiled, typing back, told you they'd be lucky to have you. Celebrate tonight. Her response came quickly. Yes, dinner at my place, 7 p.m., bringing a surprise. The rest of the day passed in a productive blur. I finished a website redesign that had been stalling for weeks, the new version infused with a visual storytelling approach I hadn't attempted in years. My client's response was immediate and enthusiastic. This is exactly what we needed. Where has this vision been hiding? Where indeed, I thought, knowing the answer had something to do with midnight phone calls and a neighbor's artistic awakening? I arrived at Sophia's precisely at 7, a bottle of champagne in hand to celebrate her successful return to teaching. The door swung open before I could knock, revealing not just Sophia but a young woman who shared her smile and the same intelligent eyes. Ethan, this is my daughter Lily. She surprised me by driving up from Boston to celebrate my first day teaching. The prodigal daughter returns. I couldn't miss Mom's triumphant comeback to the art world. I shook her hand, noting the family resemblance despite Lily's darker coloring and younger features. It's great to meet you. Your mom's been amazing these past couple weeks. Something flickered in Lily's eyes, curiosity, perhaps, or assessment. So I've heard, she said, glancing between Sophia and me. Mom mentioned you've been quite the supportive neighbor. There was a slight emphasis on neighbor that didn't escape me, a gentle probing of boundaries and definitions that neither Sophia nor I had yet articulated ourselves. Dinner proved to be a revelatory experience. Lily, I discovered, was a psychologist, specializing in trauma recovery, with her mother's artistic sensitivity channeled into healing rather than creation. She was bright, perceptive, and possessed a wry humor that often caught me off guard. So Ethan, she said as we finished the main course, champagne having given way to red wine, Mom tells me you're a website designer who's secretly an artist. I laughed, glancing at Sophia, who looked slightly embarrassed. I wouldn't go that far. I'm rediscovering some creative interests, that's all. Don't minimize, Sophia interjected. Show her your sketches. You have them here? I asked, surprised. I may have photographed a few when you weren't looking, she admitted with a sheepish smile. She pulled out her phone, showing Lily a series of images. My shoreline sketches. Some digital concept art I'd been working on. Even a rough portrait I'd attempted of Hemingway. These are really good, Lily said, sounding genuinely impressed. You have a distinctive style. She looked up at me. So what's the story? Corporate career by day, secret artist by night. Something like that, I acknowledged. Though the lines have been blurring lately, because of Mom's influence? Her question was direct, but not accusatory, simply curious. I considered how to answer, aware of Sophia watching me intently, more like her inspiration, I said carefully. Seeing someone reclaim their passion after years away from it, it makes you question your own compromises. Lily nodded thoughtfully. It's interesting how we need external permission sometimes, isn't it? To become who we already are. The conversation flowed easily through dessert and coffee, touching on art, psychology, the nature of creative blocks, and the courage required to change direction midlife. I found myself genuinely enjoying Lily's company, appreciating her sharp insights and the obvious love between mother and daughter, even as I sensed her subtle evaluation of whatever was developing between Sophia and me. As the evening wound down, Lily offered to clean up, shooing Sophia and me out to the porch with the remainder of the wine. The night air was cool but not cold, stars scattered across the sky like paint flicked from a brush. I'm sorry I didn't warn you about Lily, Sophia said, once we were alone. She literally showed up at the college after my last class with flowers and balloons. I couldn't exactly tell her not to come to dinner. Don't apologize, I assured her. She's wonderful. You've raised an impressive daughter. Sophia smiled, pride evident in her expression. She's been my rock through everything. After Michael left, she was only 20, but she was the one making sure I got out of bed, ate meals, kept going. Her smile faltered slightly. She's also very protective. This is the first time she's seen me with anyone since her father. Is that what this is? I asked gently. You with someone? The question hung between us, unavoidable now after weeks of deepening connection without labels or definitions. I don't know, she admitted, looking out toward the ocean rather than at me. I know that when something happens, good or bad, you're the first person I want to tell. I know that I've created more art in these past 2 weeks than in the previous 10 years. I know that when you look at me, I feel seen in a way I'd forgotten was possible. She turned to me then, her expression open and vulnerable. What is that, if not something significant? Before I could respond, the porch door opened, and Lily emerged with a jacket draped over her arm. Sorry to interrupt, but I should head back to my hotel. Early start tomorrow for the drive back to Boston. We said our goodbyes, Lily embracing her mother warmly, before turning to me with an appraising look. It was good to meet you, Ethan, she said, her tone genuine. Take care. Of each other? Yes? After she left, a new kind of silence settled between Sophia and me, not uncomfortable, but weighted with unspoken possibilities. I helped her bring the last of the dishes inside. Our movements in her kitchen now familiar and synchronized after so many shared meals. What would you have answered? She asked suddenly, her back to me as she wiped down the counter. If Lily hadn't interrupted? I set down the wine glasses I was carrying and moved to stand beside her. I would have said that I've spent 5 years living next door to you without really seeing you, and now I can't imagine a day without your presence in it. That watching you reclaim your art has inspired me to reconsider everything I thought was fixed about my life. That at 42, I never expected to feel this kind of awakening. She turned to face me, her expression serious. This isn't simple, you know. I'm 13 years older than you. I have a grown daughter, a life with its own complications. And I have my own baggage, I acknowledged. A failed marriage, years of creative compromise, habits of solitude that won't disappear overnight. So why does this feel so natural? She whispered. Instead of answering with words, I reached for her hand, the one wearing the bracelet I'd given her that morning. She intertwined her fingers with mine, the simple contact sending a current of connection between us. Maybe, I suggested, it's because we've both already faced our greatest fears, losing a marriage, losing our creative selves, and survived. What's left to be afraid of? She smiled at that, a genuine smile that reached her eyes. Plenty, I'm sure, but not enough to stop this. Not anymore. When I left her house that night, it was with a lingering embrace and the knowledge that whatever was developing between us had been acknowledged, even if not yet fully defined. Walking back to my own home, I felt lighter somehow, as if naming the connection had removed a weight I hadn't realized I was carrying. The following week brought a new rhythm to our days. Sophia taught her classes 3 mornings a week, while I restructured my work schedule to create dedicated time for my own creative projects. We still met for evening walks along the shore, for dinners on alternating porches. But now, with a new ease between us, casual touches, shared glances, the physical expression of our growing connection emerging as naturally as our friendship had. On Friday afternoon, I received a call from a former colleague, now working at a digital arts collective in Portland. I saw the portfolio updates on your website, he said without preamble. That interactive ocean piece, is it conceptual, or have you built it? I glanced at my computer screen, where the digital mock-up of my permission project was displayed in interactive. Installation that would translate visitors' movements into an evolving digital seascape, inspired by Sophia's midnight painting. Still in development, I admitted. Why? Because we're curating a TechMets art exhibition for the summer festival, and that piece would be perfect. If you can make it functional by July, we want it. I sat in stunned silence for a moment, processing the unexpected opportunity. July's tight, I said finally, mentally calculating the work involved. But doable, he pressed. Say yes, Ethan. This is exactly the kind of innovative work the festival showcases. Plus, there's a grant attached if you're selected for the main exhibition. After discussing details and promising to send a formal proposal by Monday, I ended the call in a state of disbelieving excitement. Without thinking, I grabbed my keys and rushed next door. Finding Sophia in her garden, pruning roses in the late afternoon sunlight. You'll never believe what just happened, I called as I approached. Relaying the conversation and opportunity in a breathless rush, she straightened, setting aside her gardening shears, her face illuminating with genuine joy. Ethan, that's wonderful. I knew that piece was special from the first sketch. It's not confirmed yet, I cautioned. The timeline is incredibly tight. I'd have to scale back client work, really focus on this for the next 2 months.
No, so do it,
she said simply. Take the risk. It might not work out, I warned. The technology is complex, and I haven't built something like this in years. She stepped closer, placing soil-smudged hands on my shoulders. Listen to me. 2 weeks ago, I was terrified to stand in front of a classroom again after a decade away. But I did it, and now I can't imagine not teaching. Her eyes held mine, steady and certain. Some risks aren't really risks at all their returns. Returns to who we truly are. In that moment, with the late spring sun warming my back and Sophia's unwavering belief in me reflected in her eyes, I made the decision. I'm going to do it, I said. I'll start tonight. She smiled a slow, knowing smile. No, you won't, she corrected gently. Tonight, we're going to celebrate. Tomorrow, you'll start with a clear head and my full support. Our celebration was simple takeout from the local seafood restaurant, eaten on my deck as the sun set over the ocean.
Ow.
But there was a festive quality to the evening, a sense of possibility that made even the familiar views seem new. I have something for you, Sophia said as we finished our meal. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small wrapped package, similar to the one I'd given her on her first teaching day. Inside was a leather-bound sketchbook, its cover embossed with a simple wave pattern. Open it, she urged. The first page held a handwritten inscription. For Ethan, who helped me remember that creation is an act of courage, and courage is contagious. May these pages hold your journey back to yourself. I traced my fingers over her elegant handwriting unexpectedly. Moved by the gesture, "It's perfect," I said. "Thank you." "There's something else," she said, her voice softer now. "Look at the last page." I turned to the back of the sketchbook, finding a small, detailed drawing, a lighthouse on a rocky shore, its beam cutting through darkness. Beneath it, "Sheed." Written, "Even in the darkest night, we find our way by what illuminates us from within." "This is beautiful," I said, looking up to find her watching me intently. "That night I called you," she said quietly. "I was following my light for the first time in years. I didn't know then that you were part of what I was moving toward." The simple honesty of her words struck me deeply. Setting the sketchbook carefully aside, I reached for her hand, drawing her closer until we sat side by side, the last colors of sunset painting her face in golden light. "I'm glad you called," I said simply. "I'm glad," I answered. "So am I," she whispered, and then she was in my arms. Our lips meeting in a kiss that felt both inevitable and surprising, the natural culmination of weeks of growing connection, yet still new and exploratory. When we finally parted, staying close with foreheads touching, I felt a certainty I hadn't experienced in years. It's not the rigid certainty of fixed plans and expectations, but the fluid certainty of being exactly where I was meant to be, with exactly the right person at exactly the right moment. "What are you thinking?" she asked, her hand resting lightly against my cheek. "That? Sometimes the most unexpected midnight calls lead us exactly where we need to go," I replied. She smiled, understanding the reference to our beginning. "If we didn't know we were lost, especially then," I said, pulling her close again as stars began to appear in the darkening sky. The following weeks unfolded in a blur of creativity and connection. Mornings found me working intensely on the interactive installation, programming sensors and projection systems, testing and refining the technology that would translate human movement into digital art. Afternoons often included consulting calls with my Portland colleague, who provided technical advice and exhibition specifications. Sophia divided her time between teaching her increasingly popular art classes and working on a new series of paintings. Inspired by what she called thresholds, moments of transition and transformation captured in color and light, we shared studio space sometimes, her easel set up in one corner of my home office, both of us working in companionable concentration, punctuated by occasional requests for feedback or creative problem-solving. Our evenings belonged to each other, cooking experiments in one kitchen or the other, walks along the shore with Hemingway ambling between us, conversations that stretched late into the night as we shared stories from the years before we truly knew each other. "I can't believe we lived next door for 5 years without really connecting," Sophia remarked one evening as we sat on her porch, watching lightning flicker over the distant water. All that wasted time. Not wasted, I countered. Maybe we weren't ready for each other until now. She considered this, absently tracing the bracelet I'd given her, which had become a constant accessory. Perhaps you're right. 10 years ago, I was still defining myself through Michael's absence. 5 years ago, I was numb. Was resigned to that numbness. She turned to me, her expression thoughtful. And you? When did you start talking to plants? I laughed, appreciating her gentle teasing. After the divorce, I think, Ferdinand was my first confidant. Judgment-free. And an excellent listener. Should I be jealous? She asked with mock seriousness. Definitely, he knows all my secrets. I squeezed her hand. Or at least he did until you called me that night. Our relationship deepened without the urgency or anxious attachment I'd experienced in younger days. There was a pleasant maturity. To our connection, a mutual understanding that we were choosing each other deliberately. With open eyes and established identities, rather than trying to complete or fix one another. That's not to say there weren't challenges. Sophia worried sometimes about the age difference, about how others perceived us, about the future. I'll be 70 when you're barely 60, she pointed out one night. Have you thought about that? I have, I admitted. And I've thought about how many people never find this kind of connection at any age. How many settle for less than this feeling of being truly seen and accepted? Her expression softened. When did you become so wise? Probably around the time my 55-year-old neighbor called me at midnight and turned my life upside down, I replied with a smile. As July approached, my installation progressed from concept to reality. The technology worked body movements captured by sensors translated into flowing digital waves projected onto sculptural elements, creating an immersive ocean environment that responded uniquely to each visitor's presence. The day I received confirmation that my piece had been selected as one of the featured works for the Portland Digital Arts Festival, Sophia was the first person I called. Joy matched my own, her pride in my achievement as genuine as if it were her own success we were celebrating. We should drive up together for the opening, she suggested. Make a weekend of it. I've always loved Portland in the summer. The casual we warmed me in a way I couldn't fully articulate the simple assumption of shared plans, shared experiences, a shared future stretching beyond the immediate moment. That evening, as we walked along the shore, watching the sun sink, toward the horizon, Sophia stopped suddenly, turning to face the water. Do you realize, she said, that it's been exactly 2 months since that night I called you? I hadn't tracked the time so precisely, but as soon as she mentioned it, I recognized the truth of it. 2 months since that midnight call had disrupted my carefully ordered solitude. 2 months of artistic revival, of growing connection, of rediscovering parts of myself I'd thought long dormant. 2 months, I echoed, moving to stand beside her. How do you feel about that impulsive call now? She smiled, linking her arm through mine as we continued walking. That it might be the bravest thing I've ever done, she said simply. Braver than starting to paint again, braver than returning to teaching, braver than letting me in. Asked softly. That wasn't brave, she corrected. That was inevitable, once I remembered how to follow my own light. As the sun touched the water, painting the ocean in shades of gold and crimson, remarkably similar to Sophia's midnight seascape that had started everything, I felt a profound sense of gratitude for unanswered calls, for creative awakenings, for the courage of a woman who refused to settle for half-living. Come on, I said, taking her hand as twilight deepened around us. Let's go home. And in that moment, home could have meant either of our houses, or perhaps simply wherever we were together, creating and witnessing each other's becoming. The day of the Portland Digital Arts Festival arrived with perfect summer weather blue, skies, gentle breezes, and the kind of golden sunshine that photographers chase. We'd driven up the previous afternoon, checking into a charming bed and breakfast in the historic district, just a short walk from the waterfront exhibition space where my installation would debut. Awoke early, anxiety and excitement making sleep impossible past dawn. Slipping carefully from bed to avoid waking Sophia, I sat by the window, watching the city come to life as I mentally reviewed every technical detail of my piece. After years of designing websites and apps that prioritized function over form, This was different, a creation meant purely to evoke emotion, to connect people with both technology and natural beauty in a new way. "You're going to wear a groove in the floor." Sophia's voice came softly from the bed. I turned to find her watching me with a mixture of affection and understanding. "How long have you been awake?" "Long enough to recognize pre-show jitters," she said, sitting up. "I used to pace like that before gallery openings. Come back to bed for a minute." I joined her, letting her pull me close, her presence already calming my racing thoughts. "Tell me what you're afraid of," she prompted gently. I considered this, trying to articulate the knot of anxiety in my chest. That it won't work as intended. That people won't connect with it. That I've spent 2 months building something no one will understand or care about, she nodded, running her fingers through my hair in a soothing rhythm. "Those fears never go away, you know, not even after decades of creating. Each new piece carries the same risk that it won't translate, that the vision in your head won't reach others." She tilted my face to meet her eyes.
Ah,
"But that's also what makes it matter. If there were no risk of failure, no vulnerability in sharing your vision, it wouldn't be worth doing." "When did you get so wise?" I asked, echoing her question from weeks before. "Around the time a certain neighbor answered his phone at midnight and didn't think I was crazy," she replied with a smile. "Now, let's get ready. Your technical team will be waiting." The exhibition space, a renovated warehouse with soaring ceilings and exposed brick walls, was already bustling with activity when we arrived. Technicians and artists moved purposefully through the cavernous room, adjusting lighting, calibrating projectors, testing sound systems. My installation occupied a prime corner space, its curved screens and sensor arrays already set up according to my detailed specifications. Ethan Morrison, a young woman with a clipboard and a festival staff badge, approached. "I'm Zoe, your technical liaison for today. Your installation looks amazing. Everyone's been talking about it." "Thanks," I said, surprised by the enthusiasm. "Has it been tested with the festival's power systems?" "Everything's running smoothly," she assured me. "We did a full diagnostic this morning. The sensor calibration is complete, and the projections are crystal clear. Want to see?" She led us to my installation space, where another technician was making final adjustments to the lighting. The piece looked better than I dared hope. The sculptural elements I'd designed to evoke waveforms stood in elegant curves, their surfaces ready to receive the digital projections that would transform them into a responsive ocean environment. "Ready for a test run?" Zoe asked. I nodded, and she signaled to her colleague, who initiated the startup sequence. The projectors hummed to life, casting a deep blue glow across the white surfaces. The sensors detected our presence immediately, and the projected ocean began to respond, gentle waves rippling outward from where we stood, colors shifting subtly with our movements, the entire digital seascape breathing and flowing as if alive. "It's working perfectly," I breathed, relief washing over me. "It's breathtaking," Sophia said beside me, her hand finding mine. "Exactly as you envisioned it." We spent the next hour making minor adjustments to the sensitivity and color calibration, ensuring the experience would be accessible and intuitive for festival attendees. As we worked, other artists and technicians drifted over, drawn by the hypnotic movement of the digital waves, offering compliments and questions about the technology. "This is going to be one of the hits of the festival," Zoe predicted as we completed the final adjustments. "The way it responds to collective movement when multiple people interact with it simultaneously is unlike anything we've featured before." By noon, we'd done all we could to prepare. The festival wouldn't open to the public until 5 p.m., giving us a few hours to decompress before the opening reception. "Let's get out of here," Sophia suggested. "Clear your head before tonight." We spent the afternoon wandering through Portland's eclectic neighborhoods, browsing bookstores and art galleries, stopping for lunch at a small cafe with outdoor seating. Sophia seemed to know intuitively that keeping me busy was the best way to manage my pre-sued nerves, distracting me with observations about the city's architecture and stories from her own. First art exhibitions, decades earlier. My first gallery. Showing I was so nervous I nearly threw up in a potted plant, she confessed over coffee. My mother found me hiding in the storage closet 10 minutes before the doors opened. What did she do? I asked, grateful for the distraction of her story. Handed me a glass of champagne, told me to take exactly 3 sips. Said, remember, darling, most people are thinking about themselves, not scrutinizing you. Then she literally pushed me back into the gallery. Sophia smiled at the memory. She was right, of course. No one noticed my terror. They were too busy having their own experiences with the art. I wish I could have seen your work then, I said. Compared it to what you're creating now. It was more technically proficient, but less honest, she reflected. I hadn't yet learned that perfection is less compelling than authenticity. As the afternoon waned, we returned to the B&B to change for the evening's reception. I opted for dark jeans and a navy blazer, formal enough for the occasion, but comfortable enough to manage any last-minute technical issues. Sophia emerged. From the bathroom in a silk dress, the color of storm clouds, silver threads catching the light when she moved. You look beautiful, I said, momentarily forgetting my exhibition nerves. And you look like an artist on the verge of discovery, she replied, straightening my collar with a gentle touch, ready to be seen. The question carried weight beyond the evening's event. Reminder that creating means making yourself visible, vulnerable, open to both criticism and connection. I took a deep breath and nodded. Ready? The festival opening exceeded all my expectations. By 7 p.m., the warehouse was filled with an eclectic mix of art enthusiasts, tech professionals, students, and curious locals. My installation quickly drew a crowd. People moving through the responsive environment with expressions of wonder and delight as the digital ocean responded to their presence. I stood slightly apart, watching as visitors discovered the interactive elements, how sudden movements created dramatic waves, how stillness brought calm to the digital sea, how the colors shifted subtly based on the number of people in the deepless space. Children were particularly entranced, dancing through the sensors to create spectacular displays of digital water, their laughter echoing against the brick walls. They get it, Sophia said quietly beside me. Look at their faces. She was right. The expressions I saw weren't the polite appreciation of people viewing conventional art. They were immersed, physically and emotionally engaged, many reaching out to touch the projected waves as if they might feel actual water. Ethan Morrison, a man in his 60s, approached, hand extended. James Whitaker, Creative Technologies Foundation. Your piece is extraordinary, the most intuitive merger of art and technology I've seen in years. We spoke for several minutes about the technical aspects and the inspiration behind the work. As he turned to leave, he handed me a business card. We fund innovative projects at the intersection of art and technology. Call me next week. I'd like to discuss possible support for your next creation. The evening continued in a blur of conversations, congratulations, and the surreal experience of hearing strangers discuss my work with genuine enthusiasm. Art critics scribbled notes, photographers captured the installation from multiple angles, and a local news crew conducted a brief interview about my creative process. Throughout it all, Sophia remained nearby, sometimes engaging in her own conversations with other artists, sometimes joining mine to offer insights about the creative elements of the piece, but always a reassuring presence in my peripheral vision. Near the end of the evening, as the crowd began to thin, I found myself momentarily alone by my installation. The digital waves had been responding to movement for hours now, yet the system was performing flawlessly, the ocean environment as vibrant and responsive as when we'd first activated it. I stepped fully into the sensor field, watching as the projected water responded to my presence, gentle waves rippling outward from where I stood, colors deepening around my silhouette. For the first time that evening, I allowed myself to simply experience my own creation as a visitor might, letting go of technical concerns to feel the emotional impact. It's like standing at the edge of possibility. Sophia's voice came from behind me as she entered the installation space. The digital ocean recognized her presence immediately, new patterns forming where our influence zones overlapped, creating something more complex and beautiful than either could generate alone. That's exactly what I hoped it would feel like, I said, watching the interplay of light across her face. The ocean always makes me feel that way, humbled, but also part of something vast and alive. You've captured that feeling perfectly, she said, moving to stand beside me. The digital waves responded to our proximity, creating a synchronized pattern that pulsed with a rhythm almost like a heartbeat. It makes me want to create something in response. We stood together in the glow of the projected ocean, watching it breathe and flow around us, till a festival staff member reluctantly informed us they needed to begin shutting down systems for the night. Outside, the summer night was warm and star-filled, the streets of Portland still lively with weekend activity. We walked hand in hand back toward our B&B, the events of the evening creating a pleasant exhaustion mixed with lingering excitement. "How does it feel?" Sophia asked as we strolled along the waterfront. "Odd to share your vision and have it so enthusiastically received." I considered this, trying to articulate the complex emotions of the evening. "Validating," I began. "Also strangely humbling. Watching people interact with it, seeing them find their own meaning in it. It's like the piece doesn't fully belong to me anymore. It exists in the space between creator and audience." She nodded in understanding. That's the paradox of creating. We pour ourselves into making something deeply personal, then release it to become something else entirely in other people's experience. "Does it get easier?" I asked. "The vulnerability of being seen that way." "Not easier," she said thoughtfully. "You learn to trust the process, to understand that the fear is part of what gives the work its power." Squeezed my hand. "I'm so proud of you, Ethan. Not just for the success tonight, but for taking the risk in the first place. For letting yourself be seen." Back in our room, the emotional and physical exhaustion of the day caught up with me. As I lay beside Sophia in the unfamiliar bed, her breathing already steady with approaching sleep, I found myself reflecting on the journey that had led to this moment. Just months ago, I had been a different person, creatively stagnant, emotionally isolated, living a life of comfortable routine that asked little and offered even less. Had someone told me then that by summer, I would be exhibiting an interactive art installation? Falling in love with my neighbor, rediscovering my creative voice, I would have dismissed it as fantasy. And yet here I was, transformed not by some dramatic upheaval, but by a single midnight phone call, by the courage of a woman who decided it was time to stop hiding from her gifts, and by my own choice to answer when opportunity quite literally called. I drifted to sleep with the gentle weight of Sophia's arm across my chest, and the knowledge that tomorrow would bring new possibilities I couldn't yet imagine. The remainder of the festival weekend passed in a whirlwind of activity. My installation continued to draw crowds, and by Sunday afternoon, it had been featured in the local newspaper's arts section and highlighted on the festival's social media. Counts as one of the must-see exhibits. We returned home on Monday to find both our lives subtly but permanently altered by the weekend's success. My email inbox overflowed with inquiries from galleries interested in future installations. From a university art department about a guest lecture from James Whitaker at the Creative Technologies Foundation, formally inviting me to apply for a substantial project grant. Sophia's own career continued its renaissance. Her summer classes had proven so popular that the community college offered her a permanent part-time position for the fall semester. Her New Thresholds series of paintings caught the attention of a gallery owner who had attended the Portland Festival and recognized her. From our conversations there, life has a strange way of accelerating once you start moving in the right direction, Sophia observed one evening in late July as we sat on her porch, reviewing our suddenly busy schedules for the coming months. "It's like the universe was just waiting for us to wake up. Or for you to make a midnight phone call," I added with a smile. August brought new developments and decisions. The success of my installation had generated enough interest that I could scale back my website design business, focusing instead on the more creative digital art projects I'd always dreamed of pursuing. Sophia's teaching position provided her with the stability to create without pressure, allowing her paintings to evolve organically rather than being rushed to market. We fell into a new rhythm: mornings in our respective creative spaces, afternoons often spent collaborating or consulting on each other's projects, evenings together reflecting on the day's progress and challenges. It wasn't the passionate whirlwind of new romance that I'd experienced in my youth, but something deeper and more sustainable, a partnership of equals who understood both the joy of creation and the discipline it required. As summer began its gentle transition toward autumn, we faced a practical question that had been hovering unspoken between us: the inefficiency of maintaining two separate houses when we spent nearly all our time together. "I've been thinking," Sophia said one morning as we shared coffee on my deck, Hemingway dozing at our feet. "It doesn't make sense anymore, does it? The back and forth between houses, the duplicate utility bills, the studio spaces that could be combined. Are you proposing we become roommates?" I asked, keeping my tone light though my heart accelerated. She set down her mug, turning to face me with characteristic directness. "I'm proposing we stop pretending we're still just neighbors who happen to find each other. I'm proposing we build something intentional, something that honors what's grown between us these past few months." "House?" I asked, already knowing her answer. "Neither," she said, surprising me. "Or both. I've been researching those. Cottage communities being built north of town's smaller, sustainable homes with shared creative spaces and gardens. We could sell both our houses, find something that truly reflects this new chapter." The idea was startling in its boldness, not just moving in together, but completely reimagining our living situation. Yet the more I considered it, the more right it felt. Our current homes belong to our former selves, the divorced designer, the widowed artist. Perhaps our shared future deserved its own fresh canvas. "It's a big step," I said carefully. "Everything meaningful is," she replied. "But consider what we've already done. You created an installation that moves strangers to tears." I returned to teaching after a decade away. Compared to those leaps of faith, is choosing a home together really so daunting? That way the decision seemed not just logical, but necessary, another threshold to cross together. Another way of affirming that the midnight awakening we'd shared had permanently altered our life trajectories. 2 weeks later, we placed both our houses on the market and put a deposit on a modern cottage in a new artisan community just 15 minutes from the ocean. The development featured shared studio spaces, community gardens, and an emphasis on creative collaboration among residents, many of whom were artists, writers, musicians, and designers in various life stages. "Are we crazy?" I asked Sophia as we signed the preliminary paperwork. "Selling perfectly good houses to move to a place we've only seen in architectural renderings?" "Probably," she acknowledged with a smile. "But I'd rather be crazy and alive than sensible and half asleep, wouldn't you?" The wisdom of her words struck me deeply. How much of my life had been spent choosing the sensible option, the safe path, the decision that wouldn't raise eyebrows or invite questions? And where had that caution led me? To a solitary existence, talking to houseplants and watching my creative dreams gather dust. "Yes," I said firmly. "I would absolutely rather be crazy and alive." Our decision generated the expected ripples of reaction among friends and neighbors. Some offered congratulations. Others thinly veiled concern about the speed of our relationship development. Mrs. Donnelly, our neighborhood's self-appointed social commentator, made a point of stopping me in the driveway to express her surprise at our sudden decision. "It seems rather impulsive," she observed, her tone suggesting she'd selected the kindest possible word from a range of more critical options. "You've only been involved for what, 3 months?" "Actually, Mrs. Donnelly," I replied, with more patience than I felt, "we've known each other for 5 years. We just weren't paying attention for most of that time." She seemed unsatisfied with this answer, but could find no immediate rebuttal. Lily, upon hearing our news during a weekend visit, reacted with a mixture of surprise and thoughtful consideration. "It's quick," she acknowledged over dinner. "But then again, Mom has spent 10 years moving in slow motion. Maybe she's allowed to accelerate now, and you're okay with that?" Sophia asked, a slight tension in her voice revealing how much her daughter's opinion mattered. Lily looked between us, her psychologist's gaze assessing and perceptive. "What I see," she said finally, "is my mother more fully alive than I've seen her since before Dad left. And Ethan," she turned to me, "I see someone who recognizes her value and supports her renaissance rather than feeling threatened by it." She raised her wine glass in a small toast. "So yes, I'm okay with it, more than okay." As summer waned into September, Our lives continued their parallel transformations. My grant application to the Creative Technologies Foundation was approved, providing funding for a series of interactive installations exploring human connection with the natural world. Sophia's gallery show was scheduled for October, featuring her Threshold series alongside some of her Midnight Revival pieces from that first creative explosion. The sale of our houses progressed smoothly, with closing dates set for early October. Our new cottage would be ready for occupancy by mid-month, creating a tight but manageable transition timeline. We spent weekends sorting through our respective possessions, deciding what to keep, what to donate, what to leave behind. "It's like excavating my own past," Sophia remarked one Saturday as we sorted through boxes in her attic. "Look at this, my first set of professional brushes. I'd forgotten. I still had them. The brushes, their handles worn smooth from years of use, still carried traces of paint in their ferrules blues and greens from oceans painted decades ago. Before loss and fear had silenced her artistic voice, you should use them for your gallery." "Opening," I suggested. "Complete the circle." She considered this, running a finger along the worn wooden handles. "Perhaps I will." A reminder of continuity that even when we think we've lost our way, the core of who we are remains waiting to be reclaimed. As we continued sorting through the physical artifacts of our separate lives, deciding what would come with us into our shared future, I found myself reflecting on the strange, beautiful journey that had brought us to this point. How a midnight call an artistic awakening, and the courage to answer both literally and figuratively had transformed to solitary neighbors, into partners standing at the threshold of a new life together. The last weekend of September, with most of our packing complete and the move just weeks away, Sophia and I took a final walk along the shoreline we'd soon be leaving behind. The evening was perfect, warm enough for t-shirts, but with the first hint of autumn crispness in the air. The sunset painting the sky in precisely the colors of her midnight seascape that had started everything. "I'll miss this view," she admitted, as we stood watching waves break against the rocky shore, "but I'm ready for the new one." "Me too," I said, slipping an arm around her waist. "Oh, I have to ask, are you ever going to tell me what really made you call me that night? All the people you could have reached out to when inspiration struck? Why me?" She was quiet for a moment, watching the horizon where sea met sky in an indistinct blur of color and light. "I've thought about that a lot," she said finally. "There was no logical reason. We barely knew each other. But something in me recognized something in you, a fellow traveler, who had also set aside dreams for practicality, passion for safety." She turned to face me, her expression open and reflective. "I think sometimes our deepest self knows what we need before our conscious mind catches up." "What did you need?" I asked softly. "A witness," she said simply. "Someone to see me coming back to life and reflect that image back to me. Someone who might be inspired to do the same." She smiled, reaching up to touch my face gently. "What did you need, Ethan?" I thought about the man I'd been just months before, professionally competent, but creatively stagnant, physically present, but emotionally isolated, living within careful boundaries that protected me from both risk and reward. "A midnight call," I answered honestly. "Something unexpected to shake me awake. Someone brave enough to follow their creative rebirth even at the risk of looking foolish or being rejected." I pulled her closer. "Someone to remind me that it's never too late to become who you might have been." As the sun completed its descent into the ocean, painting the world momentarily in impossible colors before surrendering to twilight, I felt a profound gratitude for unanswered questions that finally find their resolution, for creative sparks that refuse to be extinguished, and for neighbors who call at midnight with the simple, life-changing request, "Come over now. I can't wait until morning." In that moment, standing at the edge of the ocean with Sophia beside me and our shared future unfurling before us like a canvas awaiting our combined vision, I understood that the greatest art we create is not captured in installations or paintings, but in the courage to begin again, to answer when opportunity calls, to witness each other's becoming with love and wonder. "Are you nervous?" I asked, watching her straighten a painting that was already perfectly aligned. She smiled, the confidence in her expression a striking contrast to the woman who had once feared showing her midnight creations even to a neighbor, surprisingly. No, these pieces already did their most important work. They brought me back to myself. Whatever happens tonight is just extra. I understood exactly what she meant. The past year had transformed both our lives in ways neither of us could have imagined on that rainy April night when her call jolted me from sleep. We had moved into our cottage in the artist community, combining our creative spaces and our lives with a natural ease that still sometimes surprised me. My interactive installation series had expanded to include 3 new pieces, each exploring different aspects of human connection with nature, now touring to museums across the country. Sophia's teaching position had evolved into directing the college's expanded visual arts program, mentoring both young students and older adults, rediscovering creativity after years of neglect. But more significant than these external successes was the internal shift, the rekindling of purpose. The daily practice of creation without fear. The shared understanding that our creative work was not separate from our lives, but the very heart of them. Ethan, Sophia's voice pulled me from my thoughts. I want to show you something before everyone arrives. She took my hand, leading me toward a curtained alcove at the far end of the gallery space I hadn't yet seen in my earlier visits. To help with installation, what's this? I asked, as she paused before the heavy fabric divider. The final piece, she said. I wanted it to be a surprise. She drew back the curtain to reveal a large canvas, unlike any of her previous works. Where most of her Threshold series featured dynamic transitions between states dawn breaking over dark waters, storms giving way to clear skies, winter landscapes showing the first emergence of spring, this painting depicted 2 figures, standing at the edge of an ocean illuminated by moonlight, though rendered in Sophia's characteristic impressionistic style. The figures were unmistakably us, viewed from behind as we faced the vast expanse of water and sky. What made the piece extraordinary was its perspective. The viewer stood not looking at the ocean, but at 2 people looking at the ocean, sharing a moment of quiet wonder. The composition created a strange, powerful intimacy, inviting the viewer to witness not just a seascape, but the act of witnessing itself. It's called Midnight Awakening, Sophia said softly. I wasn't sure whether to include it. It felt almost too personal. But then I realized it's the heart of everything else in this exhibition. I stood speechless, moved not just by the technical beauty of the piece, but by what it represented the moment our separate journeys had converged. The beginning of our shared story. It's perfect, I said finally. It belongs here. She leaned against my shoulder, both of us absorbed in the painted moment that had changed everything. I've been thinking about time lately, she said. How a single moment, one decision. One call, one answered, door can alter the entire course of a life. Or 2 lives, I added. The gallery director approached, apologetically interrupting to inform Sophia that a reporter from the arts section of the regional paper had arrived. Early for a brief interview. As she moved away to fulfill her role as featured artist, I remained alone with the painting for a moment longer, struck by how accurately she had captured not just the visual scene but the feeling of that night, the sense of standing at the edge of something vast and unknown, yet somehow invitingly possible. The exhibition opening exceeded all expectations. By 8 o'clock, the gallery was filled to capacity, with attendees spilling onto the patio where additional lighting had been hastily arranged to accommodate the overflow crowd. Art critics circulated with thoughtful expressions. Collectors engaged in hushed conversations with the gallery director, and several of Sophia's students had come to support their mentor, their proud excitement obvious as they pointed out technical elements of her work to friends. She's brilliant, I overheard one gray-haired collector telling his companion as they studied a particularly striking piece depicting a forest at the exact moment dawn light penetrates the canopy. The way she captures transitional moments, just visually but emotionally. It's like she's painting the feeling of becoming rather than being. I smiled, knowing Sophia would appreciate that precise observation. It was exactly what she'd been trying to achieve, not static representations of beauty, but dynamic captures of transformation. How the liminal spaces where one state gives way to another. Throughout the evening, I watched Sophia move through the crowd with a grace and confidence that seemed both new and deeply familiar, as if she had simply returned to her natural state after a long absence. She answered questions thoughtfully, accepted compliments with genuine gratitude, and occasionally caught my eye across the room with a small, private smile that conveyed both joy and slight amazement at the scene unfolding around us. Time the last guests departed, and the gallery staff began the process of closing down for the night. More than half the paintings displayed red-soled dots, including Midnight Awakening, which had been purchased by a museum curator for a permanent collection of contemporary American art. "How does it feel?" I asked as we finally collapsed onto a bench in the now quiet gallery, champagne flutes in hand for a private toast after the public celebration. "Surreal," Sophia admitted, leaning against me in comfortable exhaustion. "A year ago, I was a woman who used to paint, who used to teach, who used to believe in her own creative voice. And now, She gestured at the gallery walls where her vision hung, recognized and valued. "And now you're exactly who you were always meant to be," I finished. For her, she considered this, twirling the stem of her glass thoughtfully. "Not exactly. Something more, I think. Because the woman I was before couldn't have created these particular works. They came from the journey, the loss, the silence, and then the return." She turned to face me directly. "They came from answering that call to life again, even when it seemed too late, too difficult, too unlikely to succeed." "It's never too late," I said, raising my glass to hers. "Two midnight awakenings, and two neighbors who answer their phones," she added with a smile. Later that night, as we drove the familiar route back to our cottage, a comfortable silence filled the Carnot, the emptiness of nothing to say, but the fullness of shared understanding that needed no words. The moonlight illuminated the coastal road, silvering the landscape in a way that reminded me of Sophia's paintings, transforming the ordinary into something luminous and significant. I thought about the year that had passed, about all we had built together, about the creative renaissance that had begun with one impulsive midnight call and flowered into this rich, purposeful life. There had been challenges, of course, moments of doubt, practical difficulties, occasional creative blocks, but never once had either of us questioned the fundamental rightness of the path we'd chosen. "I have something for you. Wait here." She disappeared into her studio, now housed in the light-filled corner space of our shared cottage, returning moments later with a small wrapped package, a celebration gift. Inside was a beautifully bound book, its cover embossed with a simple wave pattern similar to the sketchbook she had given me a year before. Opening it, found not blank pages but a carefully curated collection of images, photographs of my interactive installations, sketches from my design process, press clippings about the exhibitions, and interspersed throughout, Sophia's paintings that had been inspired by the same themes. "It's our creative conversation. The way your work influenced mine, and mine yours." I wanted to document this dialogue between our art forms. The thoughtfulness of the gift moved me deeply. It wasn't just a record of our individual accomplishments, but a recognition of how our creative practices had grown together, informing and enhancing each other in a kind of artistic symbiosis neither of us had experienced before. "This is extraordinary. Thank you for seeing this pattern, for capturing it. That's what we do, isn't it? We witness each other's becoming." The phrase struck me as so perfectly apt that I found myself returning to it in the days and weeks that followed. To witness each other's becoming, not to direct or demand or control, but simply to be present, attentive, supportive, as another person unfolds into their fullest self. Wasn't that the greatest gift anyone could offer? Wasn't that exactly what had happened between us since that first midnight call? As autumn deepened toward winter, our lives settled into creative rhythms that felt both productive and sustainable. Mornings in our respective studio spaces, afternoons often spent teaching or meeting with collaborators, evenings together, discussing the day's challenges and breakthroughs. Unlike the frantic pace of my former corporate design work or the sporadic bursts of Sophia's initial artistic reawakening, we had found a steady, consistent creative practice that nourished rather than depleted us. Our artist community had proven to be the perfect environment for this new chapter. surrounded by others who valued creative work not as a hobby, but as an essential part of human expression. We found both practical support and intellectual stimulation. Community dinners often evolved into impromptu discussions about artistic process. Shared studio spaces facilitated cross-disciplinary collaborations. Even mundane tasks like gardening or maintenance became opportunities for creative problem-solving. One December evening, as a rare snowfall transformed our coastal community into a winter wonderland, Sophia and I sat before the fireplace in our cottage, Hemingway snoring contentedly on his cushion nearby. The walls adorned with a careful selection of our combined artwork. Her paintings harmonizing with framed concept sketches from my installations, creating a visual conversation that reflected our daily exchanges. I had a call from Lily today. She's thinking about a career change. Oh, she's considering leaving her clinical practice to focus on art therapy. She says watching my journey back to art inspired her to reconsider how creativity and healing might work together. The pride in her voice was evident, and I understood its source. Not just maternal pride in her daughter's accomplishments, but the deeper satisfaction of knowing that her own courage had created ripples beyond herself, that by reclaiming her creative voice, she had somehow granted permission for others to do the same. The cycle continues. Your awakening sparks others. She nodded thoughtfully. It's strange to think about, isn't it? How our decisions affect people in ways we can't predict. When I picked up that phone at midnight, I had no idea I was changing more than just my own trajectory. Or mine. Or potentially the lives of people who experience my installations and see the world differently afterward, or your students who discover their own creative voices under your guidance, like stones dropped in water. The ripples keep expanding outward. The image resonated with both of us, our individual actions, not isolated events, but the starting points of expanding circles of influence and possibility. I thought about the interactive ocean installation that had launched my new career. How it had physically manifested this very concept. Movements creating waves that influenced other waves in an endless dance of cause and effect. That reminds me, I had an interesting email today from that science museum in Chicago. They want to commission a new piece that explores interconnection, not just between humans and nature, but between individual choices and collective outcomes. Perfect for you. Your work has been moving in that direction already. She was right. My recent installations had evolved from simple interactive environments toward more complex explorations of how individual actions create collective experiences. The latest piece, currently showing in Seattle, allowed visitors to see how their movements influence not just their immediate environment, but spaces throughout the exhibition, creating a visual representation of how we affect realms beyond our awareness. I'm thinking about water again, but this time, focusing on watersheds, how small streams join to form rivers. Rivers join to form larger systems, all eventually reaching the ocean. A metaphor for how individual lives flow together to create culture, society, history. Sophia's eyes lit with recognition. I love that. It connects to a series I've been contemplating, transitions that aren't just personal but collective. Societal thresholds. Moments when communities or cultures shift from one state to another. And there it was, again, that creative synchronicity that had characterized our relationship from the beginning. Not identical visions, but complementary ones, each enhancing and expanding the other in unexpected ways. As the snow continued to fall outside our windows, transforming the familiar landscape into something new and magical, I felt a profound gratitude for this shared life we had built. Not just the external trappings of success or the comfort of companionship, but the deeper joy of parallel creative journeys undertaken in mutual support and understanding. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't called that night? Or if I hadn't answered? She considered this. Her expression thoughtful, sometimes, but then I think perhaps it was inevitable, that if not that night, then another. That once I had awakened to what was missing, I would have found my way back to creating, and to you, through some other path. You believe that? I do. I believe that what's truly essential in us keeps pushing toward expression, no matter how deeply we bury it. The creative impulse, the need for meaningful connection, these aren't superficial wants but fundamental needs. They find a way eventually. Her words carried the weight of hard-won wisdom, the perspective of someone who had experienced both profound loss and remarkable renewal, who understood that life's journey is rarely linear, but rather a series of spirals. Sometimes moving away from our core truths only to circle back to them with deeper appreciation. Still, I'm glad it was. That particular night, that particular call. I'm glad we didn't have to wait any longer to begin this chapter. So am I, as winter gave way to spring, bringing our first full year in the artist community to completion. New opportunities and decisions presented themselves. My watershed installation concept had been approved with generous funding, requiring travel to Chicago for preliminary site assessment. Sophia had been invited to curate a special exhibition at a prestigious gallery, focusing on artists who had found or reclaimed their creative voices in midlife or beyond. It's perfect for you. Who better to recognize authentic creative rebirth than someone who's lived it? She accepted the curatorial position, approaching it with the same thoughtful intention she brought to her own art. Her selection process focused not on technical perfection or market appeal, but on authenticity of expression work that revealed the artist's unique perspective, regardless of formal training or established reputation. I'm looking for evidence of awakening, asterisk. Art that could only have been created by this particular person at this particular moment in their journey. The resulting exhibition, titled Second Genesis, opened in May to critical acclaim and public enthusiasm. Featuring artists ranging in age from 45 to 82, working in media from traditional painting to digital animation. The show celebrated creativity not as the exclusive province of youth, but as a renewable resource available throughout life. At the opening reception, standing somewhat apart from the crowd as Sophia guided visitors through the exhibition, I overheard a conversation between two women studying a series of carved wooden sculptures. Created by a former accountant who had discovered his artistic voice after retirement. It gives you hope, doesn't it? The younger woman said to her companion. That it's not too late to become something different than what you've always been. It's not different, the older woman corrected gently. More complete. Need more yourself. Their words echoed the conversation Sophia and I had shared by the fire months earlier. The recognition that creative reawakening isn't about becoming someone new, but about reclaiming essential parts of oneself that have been neglected or suppressed. Later that evening, as we walked along the shore near our cottage, the spring sunset painting the sky in colors that rivaled Sophia's canvases, I shared the overheard exchange with her. More complete, she repeated thoughtfully. Yes, that's exactly it. It's not reinvention, but restoration, finding the missing pieces of ourselves and bringing them back into the whole. We paused to watch waves breaking against the rocks. The rhythmic sound is soothing and familiar to us now as our own heartbeats. In the distance, the lights of our artist community twinkled like earthbound stars, each representing a fellow creator engaged in their own process of expression and discovery. Do you know what tomorrow is? Sophia asked suddenly. Calculated quickly. The 21st. Is there something special about? Then it hit me. April 21st. It's been exactly 2 years since your call. She nodded, smiling at my realization. 2 years since I couldn't wait until morning, since I was brave enough or desperate enough to reach out across the darkness. 2 years that had transformed both our lives completely from isolated neighbors to creative partners. From people existing within careful boundaries to souls expanding into new territories of expression and connection. 2 years of becoming more fully ourselves together than we had ever managed separately. Should mark the occasion, I suggested. Honor the anniversary somehow. I already have plans, she replied with a mysterious smile. Just be ready. At midnight, the following day passed in pleasant anticipation. I had meetings with collaborators on the watershed installation, while Sophia taught her advanced painting class and met with gallery representatives about upcoming exhibitions. We came together for dinner. Conversation flowing easily between professional updates and personal reflections. It's the comfortable rhythm of two people whose lives had interwoven without losing their individual patterns. As midnight approached, Sophia disappeared briefly, returning with a small basket and 2 glasses. Put on a jacket, she instructed. We're going out. She led me down to the shore, to a specific spot where a large, flat rock provided a natural seat overlooking the water. The night was clear, stars scattered across the dark sky, the moon casting a silver path across the gently moving ocean. From her basket, she produced a bottle of champagne and a small box wrapped in simple blue paper. Midnight on the anniversary seemed appropriate, she said, handing me the gift while she poured the champagne. Inside the box was a pocket watch, its silver case engraved with a design of waves surrounding a tiny lighthouse. When opened, the face revealed not just the time, but the phases of the moon, the movement of tides, the shifting of seasons, a complex mechanical representation of natural cycles. Turn it over, Sophia prompted softly. On the back was a simple inscription. For Ethan, time is not a line but a circle. Every ending creates space for beginning again. The thoughtfulness of the gift moved me deeply, not just the object itself, beautiful as it was, but the recognition of our shared journey implicit in its selection. The acknowledgement that our story was one of cycles and returns, of finding our way back to essential truths after periods of wandering. It's perfect, I said, running my thumb over the engraved waves. Thank you. We toasted under the stars. The champagne crisp and bright in the cool night air, the moment holding a sweet symmetry with that first midnight awakening 2 years before. I've been thinking about what comes next, Sophia said after a comfortable silence. Not just our individual projects, but where we go from here, together. And, I prompted, when she paused. And I think the answer is outward, she continued. We've reclaimed our creative voices, built this life together, found our way back to wholeness. But there's a natural next step, isn't there? To help others do the same. I understood immediately what she meant. We had both experienced the profound transformation that comes from creative reawakening. From answering the call to authentic expression, that gift, once received, naturally sought to extend itself to others. Like your curation work, I observed, and your teaching. You're already doing it. Yes, but I'm thinking of something more intentional, she explained. A program specifically designed for people at transition points after retirement, after loss, after major life changes. A guided process for rediscovering creative purpose when the old maps no longer apply. The idea resonated strongly with my own evolving thoughts about future directions. My installations had increasingly focused on creating experiences that prompted reflection and renewal, that invited participants to see themselves and their relationship to the world differently. It could be a collaboration, I suggested. Your visual art approach combined with my interactive environments, something that engages people on multiple levels, intellectual, physical. Her eyes lit with excitement, the same spark I'd first seen that midnight when she'd called me to witness her artistic rebirth. Exactly. Not just an art class or a technology experience, but a holistic approach to creative reawakening. As we continued talking, the concept took shape between ESA's program that would combine Sophia's expertise in visual expression with my focus on interactive experience. Designed specifically for people seeking to reclaim dormant creative voices or discover new ones at pivotal life junctures. By the time we walked back to our cottage, hand in hand under the vast starlit sky, the idea had evolved from vague concept to concrete possibility. We would start small, perhaps a weekend workshop at our artist community, then expand based on response and results. What shall we call it? I asked as we reached our door, Hemingway greeting us with sleepy enthusiasm despite the late hour. Sophia thought for a moment, then smiled. Midnight call, she said simply, because that's when transformation often begins, in those dark hours when we can no longer wait until morning to become who we're meant to be. The name was perfect, honoring our own beginning while inviting others to experience their own awakening. As we stepped into our shared home, surrounded by the visible evidence of our creative rebirth and connection, I felt the beautiful symmetry of the journey we had traveled, from separate lives of quiet compromise to this rich collaboration of purpose and passion. 2 years ago, A 55-year-old woman had called her neighbor at midnight, unable to wait until morning to share her creative reawakening. Now, that impulsive act of courage had expanded into a life neither could have imagined. A life of artistic purpose, meaningful connection, and the profound joy that comes from witnessing each other's becoming. And soon we would extend that circle wider, offering others the opportunity to experience what we had discovered, that it's never too late to answer the call of your deepest creative truth. Never too late to begin again. Never too late to become more fully yourself than you've ever been before. As I closed the door behind us, securing our home against the night, I thought about all the midnight calls yet to be made and answered all the moments of courage and connection, waiting to transform lives just as ours had been transformed. And I felt not just gratitude for our particular story, but hope for all the stories yet to unfold. All the creative awakenings still to come, all the becoming yet to be witnessed. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.